Hello everyone, this is Krasimir Kostov, UC Bulgaria. With this recording I want to make a demo of like an application for the educational team of Keshe Foundation as a private teaching in English for the next trimester. The concept of the whole course is to go through all teachings of all private teachings of Mr. Keshe, 2015, 16, 17, go through the knowledge and dig deeper into the understanding. That is why I've called it Hidden Old Gems, Building New Connections, because it's a review and hypothesis from all teachings. I believe that a lot of information has been given out, and in terms of quality and in terms of quantity. So sometimes we are going too fast through the knowledge, and sometimes we don't put enough attention in what has actually been said. Few words about myself. I got in touch with Keshe Foundation around 2010. Around 2011, I got to meet Mr. and Mrs. Keshe as a participant in the conference that was made in city of Varna in Bulgaria. And ever since that time, I got on board with getting to know as much as I can for the knowledge, and ever since I've been closely connected to the knowledge, to the ethos of the foundation. Last 2 years I've been UC member for Bulgarian language, and with this I'm simply trying to do my part of serving, my part of giving out what I believe can be interesting and what I believe can actually bring us closer to a better understanding of the knowledge. And of course, at the same time, to learn, because as far as I have experience in teaching and trainings, the best way to learn is actually to try to teach. So it is going to be helpful for the audience as much as it's going to be helpful for me. That's why we would be based on the interaction of the plasma of giving and receiving. So I'll be giving something and I'll be receiving something as well. So it will be a very beneficial interaction, I hope. Overall structure would be in the following manner. I would be making slides like this one, and I would be going through the teachings of Mr. Keshe. I believe it was in Italy, and I'll be using this tool to draw the concepts that I believe are important. And I'll be basically going through the text little by little. I'll be, if I have enough time, I'll be going through adding pictures, adding videos, showing the different concepts in new ways so that we can create and build those new connections from the old teachings. And for now, I would start with the first teaching of Mr. Keshe, the first private teaching, Mr. Keshe 2015, where he goes with what he always claims, that nobody is wrong and everyone will get from this technology to the level of their own understanding. What this means is that no matter at what level you are with the understanding of the knowledge, it means that it is correct. It is correct for you, for this level of understanding, and if there are people at the same level of understanding, you might be helpful. At the same time, when you go further in your understanding, these concepts that are currently in place might not be applicable and relevant, but it doesn't mean they are wrong. So this is very, very important assumption that we have in the very beginning, that everybody is correct in their understanding of the technology. But at the same time, we know that there are different levels and different understandings, different intellects that can grasp the different aspects of the technology. What is interesting that he begins with pointing out that there is a beginning and there will be no end. Was there a creator? He answers yes. Is there a creator? He answers yes. So what we can point out from here is that if we can visually represent it, because I'm a kind of a visual guy, we can say that there was a beginning and there will be no end, which means that we might represent our reality and dimension as a vector that has a beginning but has no end. And if we go further into what we know from the technology, that everything is a plasma, and this is how Mr. Keshe usually draws it, we can say that this plasma has a beginning and has no end. It is like an infinite spiral that's going round and round and maybe going back again. What is interesting to point and to continue, he continues in this teaching, is that is the creator among us? He's asking and he's giving the answer that I made man in the image of myself. And he's clarifying that every being carries the essence of the creator because it came from it. So now we're coming to the understanding that with the concept of this common denominator, basically that every single being has a part of the creator, and we are in a way related to the creator through this part, through this, let's say it, God particle. So there was a creator in the beginning, and there is a creator now, which is really interesting as it relates to the, let's say, to the teaching of the Tibetan tradition, where they, when they explain cosmogonically the creation of everything, they say that in the beginning there was this entity, the creator, then it divided itself into unlimited amount of individualities, and then he let those individualities go. They call this individuality or God particle mental monad, which is really interesting to me how different teachings and knowledges so far have grasped parts of the total understanding of Mr. Keshe technology, but not all of it. And sometimes it's good to make those connections and relations with what is already there as an old knowledge, so that we might see a different way of explanation to what is already here. But what they say is that this unity of the creator has been lost when it divided and spread towards in the universe into multiple individualities. So somehow it lost its unity and its consciousness. But what Mr. Keshe is saying is that there was a creator and there is a creator now. So this force, this unity is still there, and it is present in every living entity. So this would be the common denominator that is connecting us with the creator. On our planet, as far as I understood from the teachings, this happens to be the hydrogen. But on other planets, I guess it will be a different element that is the common denominator with the creator. So basically the common denominator is a principle of this connection, this seed, this God particle, rather than a physical entity and physical manifestation of a particular element, let's say. This is the way the presentation is going to go usually, but for now, for this first attempt for a presentation. I just will continue with the actual words of Mr. Keshe. Everything here is what he said to 99.9% extent. There is an or the added sometimes for clarification, but this is his exact words. So I'll be going through it. I know that those tabs and personal information should not be visible. It won't be. I'm just using the screen recorder here. In terms of internet speed, in terms of technical knowledge, I'm pretty aware of everything that's needed and fully capable of conducting this training. So now he comes to something really, really important, that he says no creation would have been possible if there were no imbalances. He says imbalances lead to new division, and new division leads to new life. This is very important because as far as I understand up until now is that most of the experimentation that's being done is being done somehow from the concept of imbalances to move towards a balance. But actually this is wrong. He says that in order for us to have a creation, to make new division, and from this new division to come to a new life, we need the imbalances. So we would need to go from a point of balance towards the point of imbalance, to be looking for this new division which will bring us to a new life, which I guess, hypothesizing, would be the actual balance point, inside of which we would be able probably to create a new condition, new imbalance, which would go through the same process. But this is simply a question to be asked. Present universe, he says, comes from a division of another universe as the neutron divides into a proton and electron. So our current universe, which of course is a plasma, came from a bigger universe, from the division of our bigger universe, as he says, the neutron divides into a proton and an electron. The mother of our universe, he says, is not the original universe, which would mean that this particular plasma that created our universe is not the original, it's not the first one, it's not the mother universe. So it means that there is yet another universe that led to the creation of our universe, which led to the creation. There was a bigger that led to the creation of the mother of our universe, which mother led to the creation of our universe, as the neutron divides into a proton and electron. And he says, like the neutron divides to proton and electron, and then the proton subdivides, which would mean that then the proton subdivides into yet another plasma and yet another plasma. But as we know from the previous lines, there is a common denominator in all of them, is everything holds part of the Creator. The creation of Earth and solar system is by accident and coincidental. So there is no special plan for the creation of Earth and our solar system. And he says intelligence and life, intellect and life are not exclusive to Earth. We are, he says, subordinates to stronger field intelligence creatures living with us from the beginning. What it means that on the surface of our planet, we have the human being, but he says from the very beginning we are subordinates to stronger field intelligence creatures living with us from the beginning. More of them, he says, live down below as there is intelligence above. So what do we have? We have intelligence below the surface of the earth, and we have intelligence above the surface of the earth. We have living intelligence entities that are stronger, more intelligent, and have been with us from the very beginning. Our intellect, he says, stopped us from understanding, and since we don't see gases, we can't see them. So, these would be the gaseous part of the planet, and the beings above us would be in a gaseous form. But we will not be able to detect them because we cannot see gases. But it doesn't mean that they don't exist and they don't live. Would that mean that the creatures under are somewhat gravitational and the creatures above us would be magnetical? We don't know. But it's an interesting question. See, he says specifically, we are not equipped to detect their presence. There is different type of life beyond and within the solar system. So it's not only that we have life on our planet, as he says, is not exclusivity of the earth, and apparently it will not be an exclusivity of the solar system. So we would have life forms within the boundaries of the solar system, but we would have life outside of it as well. The same way, he says, there are creatures living in the boundaries of every plasma, and according to their strength, they see each other. I believe this is very important to dig deeper into what he said. What I mean is that, listen to what he says once again, let's read it slow. The same way there are creatures living in the boundaries of every plasma. Would that mean that by creating a plasma, we would be more interested into its boundaries, because if we're interested in life, life would definitely be at the boundaries of the plasma. And he says something else as well. According to their strength, they see each other. Of course, those are sounds that would not be present in the presentation in the future. So does that mean that we are able to detect only to the limit of our own strength? Which would mean that as humans, we are limited in what we can detect because of the structure of our amino acid. Because currently we are under the influence of the soul of the body, but in the future we might move towards the strength of the soul of the totality. So when Mr. Keshe explains that one day the soul of the totality can be outside the soul of the physicality, would that mean that we will be able to see all the entities then? Because our field strength will be higher? Nobody knows. But this is what he says. According to the field, to their strength, they see each other. So according to the strength, we are able or unable to detect different entities. This to me is very, very interesting. He says man's intelligence is rock bottom. As he is limited to the physicality. We don't need physicality to confirm existence, and we need to expand our awareness as totality. He goes again with explaining that we are limited by our physicality. And what we know from the previous teachings, it's not even specifically the physicality, but it is the blood that keeps us and our soul trapped somehow into our physicality. And why is this the case? Because he says we have developed on the basis of greed, wanting to have more, but the essence is on weakness and small. Weak and weak collective weakness creates massive structures. We are looking for nanovolts in plasmatic condition. So it's the other way around. We should not be looking for something strong, for something big in terms of plasma, but we should be looking for something really small and really, to the first glance, even insignificant. Now he goes to a different topic, which is very important, I believe, and it hasn't been stressed enough. And in this teaching even he explains quite a lot about it. And it is something that I haven't seen being utilized in terms of experimentation and in terms of thought processes of the knowledge seekers. So he says, the essence of the creation is conditions. If you create and control the right condition, you can create anything of plasma. So what it means to me is that it's not the plasma that is important, plasma itself. It's basically the conditions that you put it in, which is more important than the plasma itself. And the essence of the creation, he says, is conditions. So the plasma is not exactly what needs to bother us. We should not be focusing too much onto the plasma, but we should be focusing onto the conditions. And we will find out more about these conditions as we go further in this presentation. We need, he stresses again, to become responsible for using this knowledge for peace, and it is forbidden to harm. Let's not forget the World Peace Treaty that every one of us signed, every knowledge seeker signed, and it is a base of the understanding, and it is a base for you to receive from this knowledge. So if anyone didn't sign their World Peace Treaty, please go ahead and do it, because it is an act which brings you closer to the understanding, at least to my point of view. Then he mentions the free plasma has a field spectrum and will touch the emotion of the man, which is unconditional and non-tangible. As you know, Mr. Keshe is going all over the place, so to speak, which is not bad. He's moving us from here to there, he's touching different subjects, but there is a thin line that is connecting everything. Now he's going to the concept of the free plasma. As we know, the free plasma would be the entity that is being created after the interaction of the star formation plasmas. So the free plasma will be in here. And he says the free plasma has a field spectrum and will touch the emotion of the man, which is unconditional and non-tangible. It's very important to start thinking about the emotion of the man, because he mentions it so many times that we need to understand that it's really important. So the free plasma has a connection with the emotion of the man. So in a way, the free plasma will be connected with the soul of the totality and not the soul of the physicality, and will be connected with the emotions of the man, which is unconditional and non-tangible. So the essence, the strength of our soul is in a dimension that is unconditional and non-tangible. And then he goes further to explain about the plasma and the creation of the plasma. He says when a system finds its position, it has to respond to the environment, which leads to the creation to be amino acid in a human or a plant. Again, he says there is no difference in the structure of the plasma in the body or in the plant. You have magnetic field of a given strength and plasmatic magnetic gravitational field strength, and then in division in that plasma you get amino acid of a plant or amino acid of a human. Let's go through it again. When a system finds its position would mean that we have a plasma. Of course, the plasma is a system. We have a plasma that is put in a specific conditions, and it needs to find its position according to those conditions, because it needs to respond to the environment. So wherever it positions itself in according to this environment, it will become amino acid of a human or amino acid of a plant. But in essence, he says, there is no difference in the structure of the plasma. In the body or in the plant. This is something new to me. I was thinking that all plasmas are different somehow, but here we understand, we see that the internal structure, he says, of the plasma is actually the same, and it is determined how it's going to be manifested by the environment. He says you have magnetic field of a given strength and a plasmatic magnetic gravitational field strength, and then in division in this plasma you get the amino acid of a plant or amino acid of a human. The field of the environment has dictated the manifestation of the plasma. All plasmas are the same structure. To me, this is really, really important, and nobody has elaborated on this too much. So it would mean that in their essence, in their core, all plasmas are the same exact structure, which, according to different environments, according to the environment it's been put in, it will, the same plasma, manifest itself differently. So he says in one environment it will be the amino acid of a human, and the other environment it will be the amino acid of a plant. But in essence, it is the same plasma. It is the same structure. Then he goes back to the concept of the common denominator. There is a common denominator that comes from the origin of the division of the same mother. So this plasma can be a universe, a mother universe that would divide into one type of universe in one condition and another type of universe in another condition, but it would be the mother of both plasmas, and it will have the same common denominator, which would inevitably connect those universes with their mother, as the child is always connected emotionally to their mother, to their parents. He says every newly created plasma has to position itself with what is already there. We dig deeper into the understanding of the conditions of the environment. So once we create a plasma into a particular condition, it would not simply stay as it is where we want it to be, but it will position itself in relation to all the different conditions that we put it in. They would affect it. Every newly created plasma has to position itself with what is already there. And he continues, plasma's field interaction are dependent on the condition. And I joined this environment. So plasma is condition dependent, is dependent on the condition. And he goes in deeper. Plasma size and speed and position are dependent on the environment, but at the same time itself dictates its own condition to its environment and allows other plasmas to exist. This is very important because at first the plasma is conditioned by the environment, But once it positions itself, it starts to condition the environment as well. So he says at any point, any plasma is subordinate and the boss to the environment. Don't you think this is something new? We have the plasma first, probably first, to be a slave, and then it becomes a master to the environment. Probably, just thinking out loud, first, when we create every newly created plasma, it would be a slave to the conditions, to the environment. So if we create a plasma on Earth, we would be conditioned by the Earth fields, but then after this plasma has been born, so to speak, it can become a master of the environment. At the same time, all of the time, at any point, any plasma is subordinate and the boss to the environment. When a number of magnetic gravitational fields are used in a specific way, man will become the creator. So we would need to have, in order for us to become the creator, we would need to have and to control, to use in a specific way, to be precise with what he says, magnetical and gravitational fields used in a specific way, man will become the creator. He goes in deeper. By thinking and creating the right emotion, we will be able to create any entity on this planet and the universe. So probably this specific way that we can use to become the creator would be, one part would be thinking, and the other part would be creating the right emotion. Can we say that one of them, let's say thinking, would be gravitational and the emotion, thinking would be magnetical, and let's say the emotion would be gravitational? We don't know, but he specifically points out those two, and we know the two fields that are the most important to the plasma would be the magnetical and the gravitational. And we dig deeper into the understanding of how we think and what are our emotions and how we can relate it to one another, how we connect them so that we create specific conditions. We don't know, but it's worth thinking about it, I guess. At least to me, it's very, very interesting. Now, he says he's going into the subject of the physicality and food in general, which is a very important subject of how we're going to be fed in the future. And now let's see if we are still recording. Yes, thank you. So he says, do we need food or we need energy through the channels of thoughts to have the energy? No, he's using again the thoughts. So thinking out loud, maybe thinking is actually, maybe thinking would be the gravitational, because it brings us energy into our system by thinking to have this energy. Who knows? We will be able to exist, he says, without the need to kill and destroy to feed. There is no need to kill or control. The control is in the hand of the emotional part in the man. This is very important. He goes again into the emotionality of the man. So, killing is not the answer, but the answer will be in the emotional part of the man. The control is in the emotional part of the man. So it would mean that in the human body, as we know it so far, we thought that the control and the killing is in the physicality, in the soul of physicality, but the most important tool of control is in the hand of the emotional part of the man. So the emotional part of the man is the soul of the totality. So basically the soul of the totality has or will have the control over the whole entity of the human. He says, we will teach you how to produce new materials that transfer the energy of the universe before the creation of the balance of the being, or you receive at the point of the energy and not the point of creation of a being. This is also something amazing what he says here, because we can relate it to what has been said so far. First of all, what is presupposed here is that there are new materials. So probably the feeding of the future will be through the production of new materials, or at least one part or one step towards that feeding. And it would be a process that transfers the energy of the universe before the creation of the balance of the being. And this really connects us to what he says about the balances and imbalances. So he says the creation of the balance of the being. So basically, once we have created the plasma, or once we have a living entity being of a plasma, it is somehow in a balanced position. The being, the entity, the living thing is in balance. So again, we would be going from imbalance to balance, and from balance into imbalance if we want to create new conditions and new entities. Now everything is not a circle, but I guess an infinity loop, as he always points out. At one point might be the balance, and the other would be the imbalance. So if we want to create an entity, we would need to have imbalanced conditions. We would need to have balanced conditions and go towards imbalances. So those imbalances lead us to a new balance. And again, depending on what division we might have, just thinking out loud, but it is important that he points out that the creation, that the being is basically the creation of the balance of the being. So we don't need to receive after the being has been created, but we would be needing to feed out of the universal fields before it becomes an entity, a living being. So we would be feeding off of the imbalance of the fields, trying to reach the balance. He says in time we will be able to create the right condition in the magnetico-gravitational field in the brain of the man that it can create and dictate. The same as we do create gravitational and magnetical fields in the CO2 box to absorb within the liquid to create great magnetico-gravitational field of a banana, but the same pleasure of it. It's easy and it's difficult. It's difficult because we are used to food, to control and pleasure. He points out two things why we use food. It's not only for pleasure, but it's also about control. And he points out the control here as well. There is no need to kill or to control. So basically food gives us not only pleasure, but it also gives us control, or at least we think it does. The same as we do create gravitational magnetic fields in the CO2 box. So what do we know from the CO2 box? We have two plates. I guess one would be the magnetical, the other one would be the gravitational, which is what it is. It is the conditions that we have. This is the conditions, this is the environment that is created in the liquid for it to absorb specific plasma, specific fields. So he says, in time, we will be able to create the right condition, again, in the magra field, in the brain, in the man, that it can create and dictate. The same as we do create magnetico-gravitational fields in the CO2 box to absorb within the liquid to create the magnetico-gravitational field of a banana. But the same pleasure of it. So, if we make an analogy, would that mean that with one hemisphere of the brain and the other hemisphere of the brain, we would create specific conditions in the liquid of the brain that will allow us to absorb the energy of what we want by somehow creating or bringing in the pleasure of it. Or actually, we would be feeding off of the emotion and we would be feeding the emotional part rather than the physical one. It's still very, very, very interesting. And you see, this has been said in 2015, 4 years ago, and we're still struggling to get deeper into our understanding. And here is a very, very interesting part where he explains a little bit further and deeper into the interaction and into the conditions. So basically he says interaction means being able to give and receive from both levels of energy, magnetical and gravitational. So what do we have? We have one level of energy, which we are calling the gravitational, and we have another level of energy that is called magnetical. So interaction, what it means for, let's say, a plasma to interact, it means to be able to give and receive from both levels of energy. So a plasma to interact would mean for the same plasma to give and to receive from the gravitational level of energy, and to give and to receive from the magnetical level of energy. I guess that is why Mr. Keshe, when he's explaining about the earth, he says that something is entering through the North Pole and going out through the South, but at the same time, something's going out through the North and coming in through the South. We basically have 4 levels of interaction on 2 separate levels of energy, giving and taking from the gravitational, giving and taking from the magnetical. And this is what he means when he's talking about interaction. So it is a very specific term with a very specific meaning. It's not just interaction in general, but it is giving and receiving from both levels of energy. So when we speak about interaction, we should be understanding exactly that. So there is a lot of terminology also to be cleared with how we build our mind models and structures of what has been said. So he says hydrogen atom will be here for eternity. And hydrogen atom releases its energy to confirm its existence. This is also something interesting to me. So in order for us to confirm our existence, we would need to release our energy? Or is the release of energy the confirmation of existence? He says if you can tap into the energy of it, you can feed. Because hydrogen atom will be here for eternity. So if we can tap into this energy, we can feed off of it for millennia. In most of the GANs reactors, we have used GANs of an atom. He says to feed human race, you need to use the GANs of amino acids. Okay, this is something new. If you fill in your reactors with the amino acid which is on top of your CO2 box, then you have found a way to feed humanity easily through the same process. So basically it is not the GANs that can feed the man in the CO2 box, let's say. It's not the GANs, but it is the amino acid that is on the top layer that can actually feed the man. He says you have been looking at the CO2 or the copper oxide for energy or for different things, but the most important is the amino acid on the top layer. Put it in a core and then create a free plasma of amino acid and you can feed the human race. This is huge. I think, would that mean that if we put it in a core and then create a free plasma of it, how would that happen? Well, we would have to make a star formation with interaction of this amino acid, which would definitely, as we know, create a free plasma, which would be the free plasma of the amino acid and not the GANs, which, as we know so far, is connected with the emotional part of the human. Would that mean that this might be what we've been looking for and how to feed the man? Would that mean that this is the only thing we need simply to create an interaction between cores that have been filled with the amino acid instead of the GANs? Who knows? We don't know, but I don't know if anyone has tried it. Time will tell. We will see. Now when you ask if we can feed, well, he says the knowledge has been there. If you add to the structure of the amino acids the energy of what man needs, can we feed? This is a separate subject. So if you add to the structure of the amino acid the energy of what man needs, so basically we would not only need to use the amino acid, probably just a hypothesis, but we also need to add to the structure of this amino acid the specific energy that man needs. This exactly might be the banana, the emotionality of the banana, who knows? But it would not be only the amino acid, it would be also the energy of what man needs. Then somebody asks him, can we feed humanity through a prayer? And he says, in a way, yes. Because, why he answers like this? I guess because nobody is wrong. But he needs to clarify. And how he does it is that the structure of the plasma of the amino acid of the man leads to the creation of the free plasma of the emotion. Okay, it's again a confirmation that the free plasma is the emotion. So probably our soul is the free plasma. The structure of the plasma of the amino acid of the man leads to the creation of the free plasma of the emotion. So in some weird way of the structure of it might not be the same way the Mr. Cohen, might be a different way of connection between all those. But what he says is that the structure of the plasma, we know that every element is a plasma, so the structure of the plasma of our amino acid, which in totality is the combination and the interaction between all those elements, the structure of this plasma, the Cohen, the amino acid, leads to the creation of the free plasma of the emotion. So it is inevitability that the structure of the plasma of the amino acid leads to the creation of the free plasma of the emotionality of it. So every amino acid would be creating a free plasma of the emotion of it. Or if we can relate to one of the teachings, he said, there is a free plasma in the brain, as far as I can remember, that is connected with the physical cell in the body, with a particular physical cell. So there is emotion that is connected to the amino acids, which is the free plasma of the structure of the plasma of the amino acid. Then he goes on about the prayer, which is really interesting. A prayer is in a way a donation, he says. You direct your energy strength to a structure of a free plasma that everybody has access to. You pray to give freely. So basically, everybody, because of the amino acid on this planet and the structure of the amino acid of this planet, we are connected and we know that we have this common denominator. So there would be a free plasma, non-tangible, non-dimensional, that is connected to everybody on this planet. And when we pray, we would be giving to this free plasma that later on someone else might need and take from there, receive from there. That's why it isn't it's a donation. It's directing your energy strength to a structure of a free plasma, so of an emotionality probably that everybody has access to, and you pray to give freely. Let's see if we're still going. Yeah, 1 hour. Okay. It is not so different to love and to pray. When you pray, you say, who do you pray to? This is very important. It is targeted. Love is for the other to have access to. Prayer is like a central bank that everyone has access to. If you pray to a specific one, the ones connected can download from it. So basically, when you pray to Buddha, you give to a bank account of this one. So you give to the bank account of Buddha, and everyone that believes in Buddha will be able to download from it, but nobody that doesn't believe in Buddha will be able to download from it. So it's like a private and public banking. When we pray, we open a bank account for others and for ourselves. You give with the strength of the heart and the emotion, and that is why he says temples are built. But he says if you pray to the Creator and not to the name, you go from private banking to public banking. And this energy can be used by other creatures in the universe. This is very important. So basically religion is not only religion is keeping our energy within the boundaries of the planet when we pray to a specific religious person, because the entities outside would not be able to access this free plasma because it is very private banking. They do not know those names and they would not be able to download energy from it. But if we pray to the Creator, we would be able to give to the free plasma where other entities and beings can download from. So they will be able to receive from this as well, and at the same time give, and we will be able to receive. So it is important that if we pray to the Creator and not to any manifestation of it through the religious names. He says we all have different magnetico-gravitational field strength. When you put base amino acid in a plasma, it has connection to all entities and you feed all. So there is a new concept, which is the base amino acid. Probably there is an amino acid that we consider basic amino acid, and probably that is why we needed to add the energy of what man needs in order to feed. So when he says if you add to the structure of the amino acid, probably he means the structure of the base amino acid, because it has a connection to all entities and you feed all. The biggest problem is because when you kill, you take the anger and suffering of the entity. Man gains of the physicality but loses on the emotionality, which was carried by the loss of a life. And he says even the wheat eaters go through the same. So basically it would mean that vegans and vegetarians do the same, simply because every entity is a living entity, and there is no difference between the amino acid of a plant and the amino acid of an animal. Then again we go inside the GANs and the structure. The GANs in its structure is emotional entity, but it manifests itself in the color of physicality. But in essence, all Ganses are the same. We go back to the explanation that the structure of the plasma is the same, and depending on the conditions it is being manifested and put into, it will manifest itself as a specific material, GANs or plasma or whatnot. This is really, to me, very interesting point that he's making out. Moisture, he says, allows the existence and the separation of the ganses, and as they have separation, they create a free plasma, and for that they create the emotional part of it. So moisture allows the existence, and the ganses separation allowed and create a free plasma. So whenever we have ganses and liquid state, we would have an emotional part of it. And that's why he said, so even if you dry the meat, there is always some moisture. And this moisture allows the existence of the GANs of the entity. So once we have the GANs of the entity, we would have the emotion, the emotional part, where we have the suffering. That is why he says, when blood goes out, the emotion goes out too, not to carry the suffering. And that is why you say a prayer to elevate. That is why, I guess, in some traditions you need to go through a particular process where the blood needs to go out, and to say a prayer after you've killed an animal. So you see how this knowledge has been already there, or parts of it has been related to different cultures. We didn't know why, but now we make those connections. And it will be a connections from the old teachings, but it might not be exactly only the teachings and the old gems from teachings of Mr. Keshe, but also trying to find the connections in different teachings, only to keep the base in the ethos of the foundation of the Keshe Foundation technology. So to go deeper, we have blood as emotion and lymph as the physicality. Lymph and blood dictates what to be taken from the food. Can we say that lymph and blood are the conditions of our body? So whatever we take from the environment to eat, how and what is going to manifest within our body depends on the lymph and the blood condition, on the interaction inside of our body. So can we say that, again, emotion would be gravitational and lymph would be magnetical, or lymph would be gravitational and emotion would be, and blood would be magnetical? We don't know. But he says you don't have a plasma without magnetical and gravitational. So you don't have a food without blood and lymph connected. Because everything is amino acid and is the same with physical aspect and emotional. So every food has emotional aspect and physical aspect, which means that we can relate to every food having a blood and having a and a lymph. We have to choose what we would like to take and give. And for some reason he's mentioning about poison and what it is in terms of plasma. Poison is a magnetical gravitational field that can open up the amino acid structure. On our planet, he says, we can be a fantastic energy source of other creatures, but they have decided not to have us as their source of energy because it is not part of the universal ethos. So if we go back to the beginning, where we found out that within the boundaries of the plasma of our planet, we have entities that are highly intellectual, even more intellectual than we are. And I guess for some of them, we would be an amazing energy source. They did not want to feed off of us simply because this is not according to the ethos. And I guess that is why they are much more intelligent than we are. Okay, it's been very interesting. I hope I'll be able to edit this and upload it. But an hour and 10 minutes, I guess, will be good enough time for a sample for every one of you to see the thought process and the way things are going to happen. Of course, I'm always happy to include everyone's thoughts and understanding onto the subject. I'm not really a big fan of prolonged discussions and losing time in things that are not very precise. So whenever this teaching is going to happen, I would try to keep it within a specific time limits of, let's say, hour and a half. And my idea would be one teaching to be separated in parts so that throughout the week even we will be able to discuss a little by little parts of it, and that way have enough time to get into the knowledge deeper, everyone to share, but not to lose time in small talk and chit chat. There would be my role not so much as a teacher, but as a facilitator and a presenter of what has already been said. And I would like to always make the distinction between what I think and what my hypothesis is with what has actually been said as a fact. Because I believe that we need more to rely on the facts rather than opinions. And what is a fact? A fact is something that actually happened. So this is what Mr. Keshe actually said. You give with the strength of the heart and the emotion. So I want to give from my heart and from my emotion, and it is up to you whether or not this is going to happen in the private teaching classes of the Keshe Foundation and the Spaceship Institute. Thank you again, and this has been Casimir from Bulgaria. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope it's been big enough for a sample. Thank you, and have a good day.